Those members who are leaving, please do so quietly. The final item of business today is a members' business debate on motion number 7532 in the name of Murdo Fraser on dual the A9 timetable. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would request those members who wish to speak in this debate to press the request to speak buttons now. I now move to the debate, 4-minute speeches, and I call Dave Thompson to be followed by Mary Scanlon.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I congratulate Murdo Fraser on securing this important debate. I welcome the opportunity to talk about the A9 and the key role it plays in connecting the Highlands to the Central Belt. A Central Belt which has seen more, I believe, than its fair share of investment in transport infrastructure, unlike the Highlands. Sadly, the north of Scotland did not get the investment it deserved until the SNP came to power, and the SNP's government's swift action to include the dualling of the A9 in its first Strategic Transport Projects Review, STPR, for Scotland is to be commended. In his winding up, I also hope the Minister can give us some indication of when we will get a timetable for the first phase of this essential infrastructure project. I am sure Mr Fraser's motives in bringing this motion before Parliament are honourable, although he has missed no opportunity to attack the Scottish Government in the past for failing to convert the route to dual carriageway immediately it took power, as the first minority administration in 2007. However, I was happy to add my support to his motion, thereby ensuring it had the cross-party support it needed for this important matter to be debated on the floor of this chamber. I just wish that Mr Fraser's concern for the transport needs of Perthshire and the Highlands had been paramount when he did join with Labour and Liberal Democrats to obediently vote along party lines to defeat the minority Scottish Government in its early days, thus forcing it to allocate £500 million from Scotland's small budget to Edinburgh's increasingly problematic trams project. And whatever Murdo Fraser says about it only being able to be used for other public transport projects, there was £500 million taken out of the budget, and as Murdo Fraser knows, budgets are variable and can be used in different ways. I'll let you in a minute, Mr Fraser. For those of you who acted so cynically in forcing such a sizeable proportion of the country's budget to be spent in the Central Belt in Edinburgh, to then return to this chamber to ask why multi-million-pound work has not begun in the Highlands and Perthshire is the height of hypocrisy. And you surely cannot expect your complaints to attract any credibility whatsoever in a moment. Murdo Fraser can't even argue that he didn't know what he was doing back then. David McLetchie, his leader at the time, let the truth out in an unguarded moment to the Edinburgh Evening News. November 2007, he said, and I quote, "Had they cancelled the trams, they were never going to spend that money in Edinburgh. They were intending to spend the money on transport projects elsewhere in Scotland." Now, I hope Murdo Fraser is suitably embarrassed, but he shouldn't just have a red face on this issue. I believe he must apologise to the people of the Highlands and Perthshire for siphoning off cash which could have been contributed to improving the A9, and I will even take an intervention from him now to allow him to give us that apology.
Murdo Fraser.
I am grateful to Mr Thompson for giving way. I somewhat regret the tone of his contribution to this serious debate. It does seem to me, Mr Thompson, that it was quite clear in 2007 that the SNP meant that trams money only to be spent on public transport projects. I also found a campaign leaflet from the Glasgow North East by-election in 2009 when the SNP said the Edinburgh trams money should have been spent in Glasgow. Edinburgh or Glasgow, Mr Thompson, not the Highlands.
Mr Thompson, can I remind members just to keep your eye on the motion? Mr Thompson.
Well, it's a motion on the A9, and I shall certainly do that. If you take £500 million out of the Scottish budget, Mr Fraser, irrespective of whatever you may say, that's £500 million less in the whole budget that can be spent elsewhere. People in Glasgow would have been quite entitled to have asked for the money to be spent there. I wanted it to be spent in the Highlands. Fergus Ewing also argued that case very strongly. You voted for it to be spent in Edinburgh, and that is a fact of the matter. And to make matters worse for the north of Scotland, of course, the underinvestment by the previous Tory, Labour and Liberal governments also affects the two other arterial routes into the Highlands, the A82 and the A96. But I am pleased to say that both have also been given a commitment for improvement from the SNP government under the STPR. And I am particularly pleased this includes the A82 Route Action Plan. In the meantime, the Scottish Government has not sat on its hands, but has expedited the improvement programme set out in the current STPR and has spent £50 million already on the A9. It is fast-tracking the Crubbenmore dual carriageway extension and is also progressing improvements in the A82, Cranelarrick and Pulpit Rock. The SNP government is the first government to commit to these essential infrastructure developments after years of inaction from the Tories, Labour and the Liberals, and we need no lessons from Murdo Fraser or anyone else in the opposition benches on looking after the needs of the Highlands.